about. So everyone, welcome to the Art of Pricing. Today we will be talking about taking your peak season from good to great. Our special guests we have today are Taylor Hill from Key Data, who is located in Panama City Beach, right?
Yeah, Panama City.
In Panama City. Then we have Meaghan Sneed from 360 and Natural Retreats, who is in the beautiful 30A area. And then we have Valerie Calgett with Rented, who is in Charleston. So everyone in these beautiful beach locations who have since, really bounced back. And let's say bounce back is even kind of maybe a lighter term than we can say what really happened with it all. So when the lockdown initially happened last year in the US, and then all the especially Southeast beach locations where everyone's located here opened, there was a flood of pent up demand that started and has not stopped yet still. So with destination markets like this doing this, what were some of the first triggers to I have so much in my head going on about this, obviously. What are some of the first triggers that you saw, Valerie? I know you manage a lot of different property managers in the Southeast locations, knowing that when this demand started coming back, what were you looking for? How did you know you needed to make some changes?
So we're always watching pickup, and I think that is one of the biggest triggers, in the beginning of all this, once destinations opened back up, seeing that surge of bookings, you knew that demand was going to be really, really high. I think looking at this summer, really it's all about monitoring that booking pace and your occupancy, whether for individual units in the inventory as a whole, really just kind of getting a firm pulse on what's happening and what people are doing. And I mean, we're seeing that be incredibly, incredibly strong. And ideally, you want to be priced high before that surge happens, and not necessarily be reacting. But when you do get those triggers, to be able to identify them and react.
And what could you define for the folks over here who aren't the revenue management, vets of the world? What is pickup?
Pickup is just bookings coming in. So if you think of it as reservations made today or in the last 7 days, it'll give you a good idea of the demand you have and what periods are booking.
So we go from pent up demand to the funnel, and then pickup, and then reservation, and then actual booking, I guess, as what comes in. Meaghan, what did you guys see in 30A, and what did your team what was your strategy?
There are no words. So it was, for us, it didn't happen slowly. We were closed for 2 months, a little bit more than 2 months. And during that time period, we were just kind of canceling guests as the ban got extended. And we found out the day before vacation rentals opened up again. And the day after, we exceeded our previous booking record by double. And honestly, it hasn't stopped since then. And so there wasn't a way for us to start preparing, because I think during that 2 months, we just lived in this unknown. My answer to this would be very different pre-pandemic.
Right.
But since then, I think that so many people are so concerned with leaving money on the table at any given time, which of course is a valid concern, but we're just experiencing this. We used to have a fear of not booking or leaving reservations on the table because the demand wasn't there. And at this point, our issue is, are we priced high enough, and do we have enough supply to be able to book from the demand that we're seeing? And the answer to both of those is, I'm sure that we're continuing to leave money on the table. We obviously use key data every single day. We have a full revenue management team of 5 people that are just consistently looking at bookings all day long and increasing rates. But where it's really hit us are projections for new homeowners. And we don't know how to set that standard of, we're performing 20, 30% above where we typically are. And do we say, this is the new normal? This is what you should expect next year? Or at what point will this level off, if it ever will?
Totally. And I could see where, it's a really hard place to be in, right? Because we do projections as well. Our company for, our all of our clients that are in there. And, we've always had that practice of setting a low, medium, and high of where we would expect you to project. Right now, I feel like in these Southeast or any destination market that is really, seeing this insane amount of demand coming in, we need to set some disclaimers that say, this is not technically the normal. What normal will it go back to? We're not quite sure. And I do know when we were talking in our practice session, we were all talking about real estate and demand and where do we think that it's going to go in a couple years, right? I think 2021, we're still going to be in the same place that we have been for a bit. But are we going to go back to our old normal? Is there a new normal? What does that look like? And I think we can go, move on to that in a second. But I really wanted to ask Taylor, being that you were business development at Key Data, what metrics do you guys urge your clients to look at and supply them with to know whenever they need to make changes or increase their rates or when things are starting to change?
Now, fortunately, Key Data has a lot of reports that allow you to look ahead. And so we've been able to use that pacing detail report or that benchmarking report to show you how the market is trending ahead too. I know last year at this time, I was in a different role. So I was working more one-on-one with a lot of clients. And there were those people that were just out of office because everything was closed. So they weren't going into the office. So they didn't even know, like when things opened back up, they were unprepared for that huge thing. Like Meaghan, you guys might have had that kind of lead, like, well, it's going to happen tomorrow, so we can get that prep. But not everybody did because people had shut the doors. And so I remember talking to people and then they had missed out on that. But we do have the reports that allow them to see like, okay, here you've got over the last 7 days, these are the bookings you've had. This is the dates that they're booking for. It's one of our guest check-in by booking date reports. And those are the ones that around this time in May and June, when we started picking back up, we really encourage people to look at is just seeing when guests are booking for right now, being able to see that so far in advance. Even if like right now I've seen just looking at, data in our area, people are starting to book for October. As soon as that spring break vacation is closed, we're seeing that timeline pick up. And so you have to know, just like Valerie was talking about, that pickup report, knowing when those guests are coming in, when that demand is, so you can focus on adjusting rates as needed and preparing for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Key Data is a great, resource for you to have on top of multiple resources. I think all revenue managers know you have to look at, there's not one data resource right today in the vacation rental industry that's going to get you to that right number. You have to kind of build that strategy that's going to help you get there. So now we talked about like, what did we look at? What did we have to see to know that, pickup was, really high. We needed to create a new strategy on there. Now bookings are great. Occupancy is so high. You're making double what you made last year. How do you know, how do you know if you're leaving money on the table, Meaghan?
I think you just are. Yeah, I think everybody wants to know the secret but the truth is, if this would have happened 5 years ago, I mean, we are in such a different place now with the amount of resources that we have in vacation rental revenue management that just didn't exist, when we came into the industry. And so I think leveraging the resources that you have, whether it's like a combination between real and scraped data to be able to understand what your competitors are doing. We keep a constant pulse on Key Data and other resources, understanding the demand in the area, I think is most important, and then fluctuating rates based on that. But no matter what we do, I mean, there's always competitors that are pricing higher than we are. And so I think what we've managed to do is try to understand what their occupancy is and if they're pricing themselves out of the market. And in some areas, we've been able to kind of set the standard of what that price looks like when we have the largest amount of inventory. But in other places where we might have just a couple of homes, or if you're a RBO, it's harder for you. And so I think, like I said, leveraging the real data and the scraped data and just trying to make the smartest decisions you can with pricing, if you've priced too high, like it will become very obvious if you have 10 inquiries one day and 1 the next. And so I think just having a constant understanding of the inquiries that you're receiving and the bookings that you have as well.
Right. And I think that's, a great point to, to say like RBOs and for the that's for rent by owner. So the people who are basically managing their properties on their own, they do have they have a lot of data resources out there, but a lot of them are using the platforms. And I'm not saying that using a platform is bad. Using any kind of data resource is good for you, but you need to be cautious in some of these cases. The platforms do want to make money on it. So whenever you're looking at it and you're like, man, this platform is telling me to price a little bit lower. And when I'm looking at comps in the market, it's higher. There's a strategic reason why that is happening, because they're trying to get rate parity in there. I actually got a question from, I think she was an RBO last night. She's not attending today, Kathleen, so I will be sending her the recording after this. But she sent me a question. She said, I've raised my rates by at least 29% this year, and the comps are still higher than me. What do I do? Valerie, do you have any advice for Kathleen?
I mean, I would tell her to keep going higher.
That was my initial response. Was going to say, I think they're going to say keep going higher. But I'll let you.
Yeah. No, go for it. No, I mean, I think Meaghan was like really onto something, talking about like looking at comps and seeing what they're doing. Obviously, if you know that people are priced higher, then you rise to, at the very least, that level. One thing I would say that people really need to keep in mind is to just be really granular about it, like be really like thoughtful about what kind of property you're looking at and your pricing. If you have something that has a private pool or is oceanfront or lakefront or whatever it may be, and there is a inherent scarcity in that type of property, like there are only so many of them, be more aggressive there. If all of your homes are starting to fill in, maybe start pushing up your condos if you have like both inventory types. Be really thoughtful about like what the landscape looks like for somebody who's shopping right now. And I think that that's somewhere where like it is a bit more human, and it's not necessarily like data focused, but at the end of the day, what's available currently is your competition. And so even if and I ran into this with a client yesterday, they brought us a brand new home. I was like, I want you to know this is going to be priced way higher than the property it's exactly like that is mostly filled in for this summer. It is coming into the market. It's a desirable property. Like, we are starting high. I know they can get it. And it's just in a unique situation. So don't be afraid to price something higher than something else in your inventory that's already booked, even if that other property is a better property.
Totally. And would anybody on here suggest setting max rates, or just saying, like, if you are using an automated, a dynamic pricing tool, and it gives you obviously we have the option for minimum rates and it gives you the option for max rate setting, would you suggest to do it? We have a unanimous no. I figured we
not right now.
Not right now, right? If you can get more money out of it, do it. And I think there's this hesitation on, is my property valuable? Is it valued at this rate? And they don't want reviews to be bad compared to it. But this is compared to the market. Like, your property is compared to the market. You're not doing something that somebody else isn't doing, right? And I think this is a great point to bring up. Like, if you are priced below the market, how can that hurt you?
Yeah.
Whoever wants to.
One thing I would just say is, like, it's related to a little difference. We had this conversation not long ago, is that, like, we're talking about vacations, like, it's discretionary spending. We are not like jacking up the price of gas during like a crisis. You're not
discretionary spending. I love that.
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, and I've had this conversation with some managers, they're like, I don't know, like this feels kind of weird. But like there's so much competition and pent up demand in all of these markets right now that like people are willing to spend, and they're willing to spend to get what they want. And that is not taking advantage of them. It is knowing the value of your asset. And so this is one of those cases where you have to say, no, this is in the best interest of my business and my asset, and allow people who are, again, discretionary spending to determine what's the best fit for them.
Totally. And I think that, makes sense. So, we're at you see pickup is coming. You have a lot of demand, supplies dwindling, just increase your rates, like, keep increasing them. You already have a lot of money, and you feel your season's really good and the revenue is really great. And you probably feel humbled by that, right? Like humbled that you're in that spot. Don't let that
Don't take
humble,
advantage.
right? Don't let that humbling cripple you. Just keep going with the market, because the problem is, and we used to have this on our OTA days, if you are priced lower than the market, travelers start to wonder what's wrong with your property.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to go and they start to compare everything. And even if your property is great and cheaper than the property next to them, but it's significantly less than all the others, they wonder what's going on. Taylor, I'm not sure if you see this trigger or anything in key data, but I'm wondering, with this pent up demand and having so much demand in areas, are we seeing the booking window the same in key data, or is there variance? Have we gone back to normal longer booking windows, or are we still in like that short booking window mid-range area?
I'm still seeing a short booking window, kind of mid-range area. And I remember being at a conference years ago where they were like, that booking window is just going to get smaller and smaller. And I think we jumped like 5 years in the future with that booking window, because everybody is just waiting to see, like, well, what are the COVID restrictions? Are they going to change? What if I get COVID? Am I not going to be able to go? What if my family? So they wait until they get that test within a few days, and then they know, like, okay, I can travel. But then, of course, it was back and forth on restrictions. New York just allowed you to go without being quarantined for 14 days when you get there, and 14 days when you come home to Florida, if you live in Florida. So a lot of that was a huge play. So we are still seeing a shorter booking window, definitely short to mid, but the long booking windows, they're just really not. Like, we are seeing, like I said earlier, some people are starting to pick up in October, but those are people that they know they've already, they just were here, they can come back again, kind of thing.
You make a great point there, because I do remember, everyone saying, like, even I left the OTA side 3 years ago, and I remember right when I left, that was something that we were saying, is the booking window is changing, it's shorter, the demographics getting younger. And I think a year later I was saying, and someone was like, well, I'm not seeing that. So that's not happening. And then COVID definitely put that in the hyperdrive. And also the people, we have a lot of people are still in virtual work. While I know that's not everywhere, it really depends on location. I live in Austin, Texas. My husband's still virtual working, but he actually does have an office. And every month, right, they are letting them know the ETA of when they're going to go back in the office. So they were going to go back in April, found out a month ago that they're actually now slated for July. Guess what we did? We booked a vacation in April. Like, at that moment, because it was we didn't know, we're like, oh, okay, well, he does not gonna have to go back to office. Why don't we go somewhere for 2 weeks where we can have a flexcation on there? So it's not only like the short booking window of COVID, it's the new quality, or not quality of life, the new structure of life, and the ability that you have to make these differences last minute. And I wonder if that's going to keep going. That's that landscape of what this is going to look like.
I think, oh, sorry, Meaghan.
No, it's okay. I was just thinking, like, one thing when you were talking earlier, Taylor, that I thought about is we have lived in this structure of peak season versus off season, and that's just not really a thing anymore. And so I think when you're looking at pricing summer or spring break or ski season, if you're in a winter destination, with flexcations and with the ability to work from home, people are booking last minute vacations. Drive-in destinations are booming more than ever. So take advantage of the off season and increase pricing there. I think that there's such an opportunity to be able to understand what your previous rates and occupancy have looked like during those time periods. And that's just not the case anymore. And then another thing that I was thinking about earlier, and I swear I'm done, is I think that there are so many tools out there for us now. It can almost be like analysis paralysis if you're a revenue manager. And so many people don't have revenue managers for those smaller companies. And so, like, continuing to make pricing a priority, and your comp sets better than anybody. Who your competition is better than anybody. And while I appreciate the Verbos of the world who help set what those constraints look like, I think, like, don't focus completely on what those comp sets look like. Like I said, your inventory better than anybody. What your rates should look like based on the business that you own or work at. And so just keep an eye on that. It is the pulse of your business.
Totally. I think that's really, a good point that's there. And, I say this all the time, and, I'm actually the least revenue manager probably of anyone on this call when it comes to pricing and data. But, you know, if you want to take your season from, you know, good to great, whether it's your off season or whatever season it is having a dedicated pricing individual, whether that is outsourced or insourced, someone that needs to be their responsibility. Pricing is so big of a role. You know, revenue is what drives your company. It needs to be, there needs to be oversight constantly.
Exactly.
On there. And, you know, it's for a while, it was just like, you know, let's just put what rates are in there. That's just not the world anymore. You can't do it. There's tools, data, you know, resources out there. Use them, use the resources. So since we have 6 minutes left, or 8 minutes, obviously, my math, I just said I wasn't a big revenue.
We're trying to wrap this up.
Right? 8 minutes left. What I want each of you to do is maybe, you know, key takeaways that you like to give anybody whenever they're looking at trying to increase their season or just make the most of their season. Taylor, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, not to be a plug, but really you need data. Like you cannot make decisions without data. I remember like when I started in the industry, it was like, yeah, we're just going to adjust them by 5% or 10% because that's what they were last year. We keep them at the same rate. And now like looking at the data and seeing how it's fluctuated so much over the years, and I'm wondering like, how did we even do that? How did we like look at last year's and keep it at that same rate? Because that's what we always book that 2-bedroom condo at kind of situation. And so, yeah, just you can't make decisions without information. And so make sure you're making informed decisions and not just based off of like feelings. So I want to make sure that's kind of my takeaway for sure.
Love it, love it, love it. Valerie?
I would say don't be afraid to make big moves, and don't be afraid to be unconventional. Meaghan kind of touched on this earlier, but like you have through COVID become like you've been introduced to new clientele who are within drive markets. I really think that we're going to see stronger shoulder seasons, especially coming out. So if you think that that is a possibility in your market, start high. You have room to come down. You don't have room to go up once it's been booked. So don't be afraid to go big, and definitely plan for the future. So look further out.
Meaghan?
I think taking advantage of what we have in front of us right now, which we don't know how long it's going to last. And so, like you just said, having a dedicated person on your team, whether that person manages the reservations team or is a dedicated revenue manager, just somebody that can be held accountable for these decisions and is looking at it constantly is so important. I think that pick a couple tools that work for you so you can understand the landscape and make informed decisions, but also like just keep that pulse on your inventory all the time and you'll know the right decisions to make. It's not rocket science. I think that it requires time and it certainly pays off, literally.
Really, like requires time. And, you know, again, kind of like Taylor said, not for a plug, the reason why Rented even went into revenue management was that we were working with so many property managers and asking them why weren't they implementing a more strategic rate strategy. And the number one answer we had was time. We don't have time on our plates. And Kathleen actually was able to make it on because it looks like she just asked her the question. I love it. And she's like, where do you get pricing data? So there are a lot of places to get pricing data. And just to name a few would be key data dashboards. You know, you can get pricing data there and a lot of KPI information. Depending on the market that you're in, also you could get comparison and benchmarking versus the market. You can get it within your Verbo platform, a market maker. You can get it on Airbnb, which is on Airbnb smart pricing, maybe. I don't know why I can't remember what that is. Transparent, AirDNA. You do have to be careful whenever we say this is for source versus scrape data. So when AirDNA, VRBO, and Airbnb, what they're going to be giving you, and some other ones are going to be giving you is more scrape data. So it's not actually giving you the cleanest data from the property management system. It's not taking out owner holds, maintenance holds, or anything like that. Where key data, who else has source data? Is it just key data? Key data, your own crawlers, like, I mean, Rented we have our own crawlers on the different sites that we normalize, gives you more data that's from the property management software so that you actually have better to the actual daily rate rather than adding in the fees and other stuff. What other sources am I missing?
Your own data.
Oh my gosh, I didn't say that.
No, that's okay. I mean, it's in key data if you have key data, but if you don't have that, your own data is hugely important.
Yeah, your own data is great. You know, I know we're in like you people are getting told in multiple different ways, like historicals are thrown out the window, but they're not. Like they are to an extent, right?
Mhm.
Like we're not like you still look at your historicals and see how you did, and you're always going to be a gauge of whether you go up or down. And even with COVID, obviously, like that's owner expectations. In 2 years, when you look at your historicals, obviously think about the time period of what it was, that you may not be able to have a 25% increase year over year because of the pent up demand that happened from a pandemic. But you still want to keep those in place, and you can kind of see the booking window, the pickup, the differences that are be going on to really kind of see how your seasons change year over year. So don't keep that in mind for sure.
Right.
Is there anything else that we missed? I feel like I could go in a lot of different ways that would take us more than 3 minutes to talk about. Whenever we're looking towards the future, Meaghan, are you guys just riding the wave, or do y'all have plans for the future as things slow down, or not really quite sure?
We have made a concerted effort, and our whole revenue management team is watching this. And so I'm using the term we, and they're probably like, you've not helped us. Have made a concerted effort to try to release rates earlier and earlier every single year. And while that can be a tough conversation with owners because, they want to book for themselves and their families, I think the earlier that you can set rates for future times, like our entire 2022 season is available for booking, the better you are. We're already seeing bookings, a whole lot of bookings for 2022. And then just those fall and shoulder seasons, keeping a consistent eye on, we are having to use data from the past 10 years to understand what our occupancy looked like this time. And to be honest with you, we've kind of thrown 2020 out the window.
That makes sense to go
ourselves
that
to
year.
2019. And so what we've done is looked at 2019 versus how we're performing now. And we at least understand what our trend line should be. Obviously, we're seeing 20, 30, 40 times the ADR that we've seen in the past. But I don't think it's going to slow down. Obviously, we're fortunate enough where 80% of people that travel to the destination that 360 has properties in are driving. And so that certainly works in our favor. But we are keeping a constant pulse on what international travel is looking like. I think that could have an impact and likely will have an impact on us. So stay informed with what the latest travel bans look like. And riding the wave for now.
Right.
Our revenue goals.
I forgot that was a big part that we had talked about, when international travel starts to be more accessible for people, like, is that going to impact US travel? And I'm in a standstill with this because while I'm a traveler and I do want to travel internationally, it's a lot easier for me to drive or travel to Florida from Texas with my 14-month-old son than to fly to Italy. So now, like, this accessibility that vacation rentals have offered everybody after the pandemic, it's, hey, we still think international travel is going to be there, but it's like we opened another option in US that people weren't thinking about before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. I think it can go either way, to be honest with you. I think it's going to pick back up, but I think for as much as it picks back up, I think you're going to see more people who realize I can take a long weekend somewhere I can drive to. Mm-hmm. I think all those people who figured that out during this, I can rent a house at the beach or the lake or the mountain or whatever for 3 days. I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Totally.
We'll see.
We're going to see. Well, we've hit 11:30. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining me today. I think this is a very meaty conversation, and I think I've been saying that every week, but that's really, that's how much conversations we have to do around revenue management. Appreciate all the attendees. If you have any other questions for me or any of the ladies on here, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to have one-off conversations with you. Next week, we will be digging into photos. So, high quality photos, photo captions. We'll be joined by a couple members from True Place. So that'll be a really fun conversation to have. That's it. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.